have given an outsized role to the APA, as we predicted last week, and has magnified the comments of single individuals beyond all the positives that have come out overwhelmingly from the conference. And so if any reporter or any media house were to be truthful, they would say that this conference is a great success and that it's a model of good governance, that it is an unprecedented level of engagement and consultation by a government with a section of its population that cannot be found anywhere in the world where indigenous people are concerned. And we stand strongly on those comments. Where, in which country would the entire cabinet spend an entire week with the elected indigenous leaders from that country discussing issues of their development with them? And that is precisely what's happening in the past week. And the discussions are respectful, they're free-flowing, they are positive, and they are focused on problem solving. 100% of the comments in the day, I made a presentation to the NTC, and thereafter I spent 3 hours discussing with the two shows various development initiatives. And every single comment, not a single one, and I had in those 3 hours maybe about 35 two shows speaking, could be even more, and not a single negative. Not a single negative. They are all supportive of the actions in terms of development that the government is pursuing in their villages, and they took pride in recounting the implementation of the projects that were funded by government and how it's transforming the lives of their people. This was the overwhelming sentiment there. But that, if you read these newspapers, you will think the NTC was a hotbed of contradictions and disrespect and controversy. And even in the 3-hour session, the APA representative, the chairman of the APA, his son who is Mr. Hastings, he sat there in the 3 hours when all the two shows are speaking, and he never had a single negative to say. So, first of all, we have to publicly call out these newspapers for distorting what took place at the conference. If there is any disrespect of indigenous people, Amerindian people, it's what they are doing by elevating APA's voice to above that of the over 200 leaders who were there, and the voice of a single individual and the PNC MP. Those are the 3 entities and individuals around which all the stories revolve. Not the positive that came out of all of the villages. And so, what was positive? First of all, let me address what was in today's editorial, the right to self-determination. And this was Starbuck News editorial. Now this right to self-determination cannot be because the government is engaging with the Tushals, we are undermining the right to self-determination, or because you have different views, you're undermining the right to self-determination. The right to self-determination is a legal concept. And where did we give this right to the Amerindian community? In what legal form did we do this? And which government did that? It was the PPP government through the Amerindian Act. Now, if you look at the act here, it speaks about governance and autonomy. It speaks about self-management. It speaks about the powers of the village council to make rules. And we have indicated there are 17 areas in which they can make rules to govern their village. It enshrined this act, passed in 2006 under the PPP government, gave the villages the right to make the village council to make rules in 17 areas. I don't want to read all of the areas. It will take a very long time. But they had that right to make rules and then to police the rules. If you violate these rules, the village council had the right under this act to levy a fine on you. So here is where, in a legal form for the first time in Guyana, that we gave the villages the right to self-determination and to self-manage their affairs. It's not what the APA is talking about. It's not the editorial in the Starbuck News because someone has a dissenting view that people don't have the right to self-determination. It is in a legal form in the Amerindian Act, given by the People's Progressive or passed by our government because we believed in the concept. And so that's the first thing that they had wrong. But they would never acknowledge that it was the People's Progressive Party that gave the village councils the right, the power for self-determination in a legal form through this act. That's the first element. The second element of this act was the establishment of the NTC. The NTC had a legal form in this act, and the powers of the NTC were enshrined in the act. It was the People's Progressive Party civic government that did that in 2006. The third area of this act, because I don't want to read all of it. It's a huge document, and I can, if I were to get this opportunity just to present this document, it would take several hours because it came out of consultations, and you will see how far-reaching it is. But the third area concerns village lands and mining. Prior to this act, Amerindian communities had no right of refusal of mining on their lands. The Guyana Geology and Mines Commission could give you a prospecting license and a mining license to mine on any land, including Amerindian land titled Amerindian land, because Amerindian communities did not have the right of refusal for subsurface or for subsurface minerals. Under this act, we changed that. The village council had to agree for you to mine on their lands. And it was through an open process. You had to have a general meeting of the village council, and 2/3 of those attending the meeting had to give their consent. So it meant free, prior, informed consent. The villages had to get involved. Secondly, once they gave you approval, they had to pay a tribute, to a negotiated tribute as a revenue stream, to the village itself. So not just the right of refusal to mine on their land, but they had to be paid for that right. They had to share part of the proceeds of coming out from the mining activity. That was done under the People's Progressive Party civic government in 2006 as part of this act. You find out how many other countries have given indigenous people, Amerindian people, indigenous people, that right. You'll find maybe one country. At the time we were passing the act, there was only one country in the world that did that. Then, in the same act, we dealt with how land would be extended, because there was no framework for application for extension of your land. And in this act, we defined the criteria that you had to meet. You had to meet 2 criteria, basically, to make such an application. One, you had to be living in that community for 25 years, a minimum of 25 years. And 2, your community had to have over 150 persons. So we defined the criteria for land extension. That was never there before. I can go on about the other elements of the act, but these were far-reaching changes that we enshrined in a law. You would never hear Starbuck News or Kaichor News or APA talk about this act and the changes we have made here, and how it has transformed many of these communities and the rights of the communities. The APA at one time was opposed to Amerindians mining on their own land. They've altered their position slightly today. But I wish Starbuck News would have spoken about this too. So in the same editorial, they berated President Ali for speaking about our achievements and the support to the Amerindian community. And they said, "One cannot help but wonder why a government that claims to be the best thing since sliced bread feels compelled to constantly remind people at every turn of what it has done or is doing. Surely its record would speak for itself." And that's not so. Because the same Starbuck News and Kaichor News, they will distort that record, as they've been doing all the time. So the record will not speak for itself. And if we do not constantly remind people then about the history and what has happened and how far we have come and who has supported these communities, then the villains of the past become the heroes of today. Those who tried to steal the 2020 elections today are arguing for a clean voters list. The same people who are trying to steal the election, they refashioned themselves. The same people who took away the children's grant now are saying, oh, 50,000 is not enough. They took away 10,000 but are saying 50,000 is not enough per year for the children. If we don't, and people repeat that. If you don't remind constantly about what was there, not in such a distant future that people seem to have forgotten, then you're not worth your salt. If we had a decent media that would have said that, would have reflected the whole picture, maybe we wouldn't have done that. We wouldn't need to do that. But we constantly need to remind people. So someone who took away 1,792 CSOs, or 1,772, 972 CSOs who fired them, can today complain about pit latrines in the hinterland. Oh, the children are using pit latrines now. And the same person who complained about lack of internet in the hinterland, his wife was the minister responsible for telecommunications. We left $17.2 million US under our first LCDS funds for hinterland connectivity, and she utilized the funds in a slipshod manner and diluted their development in the international community. The creation of all these hubs were stopped. The same people who were complaining about ICT hubs now you remember when the APNU took office, we bought 2,000 computers for 10 in each of the 200 hubs that we created in the hinterland, ICT hubs. They diverted the 2,000 computers. Go back and read in 2015. They did not send them into the hinterland. The solar panels that we bought to power those hubs, they decided to put them on State House and some private government buildings in Georgetown. People don't forget the history, and they don't want us to remind people. The Starbuck News is offended that we're reminding people. Surely the record must speak for itself. Well, that doesn't happen, because the same people who have neglected the Amerindian communities, who took away their computers, took away the solar panels, now complain, and who didn't use the money we left, the 17.2 million, or they did use some, about 5 million of it, but didn't use it for the dedicated purpose, now can come and complain about this. So surely we need to remind people, including the new leaders at the NTC, of what we have done and how we have changed that outlook, because we're back at it now. We're creating the hubs now. We have put a large sum of money in the creation of the hubs. We are now putting in the computers. We have internet. We're building new toilets in there too, but we're also building a $2 billion school, not one, over $10 billion on schools across the hinterland, $2 billion Guyana dollars on one school at Quibana. That is more than APNU's entire capital budget for 1 year for all the sectors. And that is only for what we're spending on one school in the hinterland. Who will say this if we don't say this? But they're offended by this when we say it, like they're offended about my press conference. I shouldn't be hosting these press conferences. But they then gave the other side. Look at all the stories coming out from the hostile side, dominating everything, but where is the positive? These two shows, they talk about, lack of consultations with the two shows, etc. Nobody is saying on 2 initiatives alone, these two shows are leaving Georgetown with $5 billion. $4.8 billion with LCDS funds, and over $200 million just on the sport facility development. That's 2 initiatives alone. I'm not speaking on the presidential grant. I'm not speaking about the 10 billion that we're spending on hinterland roads, or over 10 billion on schools in the hinterland. I'm not talking about the 20-odd billion that we're spending on 4 major hospitals in these regions now, in each of them. I'm not even talking about those. And they're saying, oh, the conference is not meeting its purpose. It's not free. If you go there, you'd see every minister discussing with their technical staff, meeting in a free-flowing format, discussing with the Tushos their development. This is the unique thing that's happening there. It doesn't happen in other parts of the world. And this is what we get from it. So, the same editorial spoke about the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People mandates that states consult with them through their representative institutions to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent before adopting and implementing measures. So FPIC has been an important part of good governance. I outlined to the Tushos APA's involvement in trying to block the issuance of our carbon credits. They wrote the Art Secretariat. I listed the times they wrote. They made appeals. They even didn't want to comply with the ruling under the appeal. They went to the Inter-American Council on Human Rights to try to block this initiative that would benefit these communities. Not a word about that. They can fact check that. They can show news APA, because I listed the dates when they wrote the letters and when they went to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and their arguments. And all their arguments were to block the issuance of carbon credit and the $750 million that we've earned. Did they seek the free, prior, informed consent of the 242 villages that are there before they sought to block it? Of course not. So on whose behalf were they speaking? But we've already determined that APA is a group of people who's been established to use Amerindian people to raise funds for themselves, the Amerindian cause. So they always have to find negatives. They always have to fight something to say to the international community, we're fighting for something, so give us some more money. But the money never gets spent for indigenous people's rights. So we've already established that. They didn't follow FPIC. So on whose behalf were they blocking these funds, or trying to block the funds? So we decided we will pursue good governance. I'm glad that Sabric News mentioned FPIC. And we put this in they had a Tusho. So this all came about when I said to the Tushos, every Tusho here, these are the funds for this year. You're going to get $4.8 billion this year from the LCDS funds. And you have any village in here has the right to opt out. You have a right to opt out, not to collect the money. APA has been saying not to collect the money. You have a right. That's your right to do so, opt out of these development funds. Now, last year, we did the same thing because people have to opt in. So, did that happen? Was that an abusive statement? So the same Tushau that they give prominence to, who's associated with the APA, who was in the meeting, 3 hours later, he didn't say a word in that meeting about my comments there. And then I saw Stabroek News saying, oh, he took Jagdeo to task about this comment. And the Tushau saying, I would have walked out, I want to walk out if a comment like that is made again. So, that's, he sat there throughout it all, heard me say this. And what I was saying basically is what's already in this document. Now, if the Stabroek News had read this document carefully, or those who are making comments, they would see that the Low Carbon Development Strategy of 2030 has a whole paragraph, and guess what it's called? Opting in into the R3 revenue sharing mechanism. Opting in. So you have to opt in, and it's 3 pages how you can opt in. So all I'm doing is putting to the meeting the right to what we said here in the document, the right to say yes or no to development, benefit, or opportunity. This is in the document, the right of the Tushaus to say yes or no to development, benefit, or opportunity. It wasn't to harass this Tushau or the APA. It is what we have to, by procedure, put to the Tushaus. They have a right to say, I want to be part of it, or I don't want to be part of it. And it is described in this document, the LCDS, which is a public document. So they're big hullabaloo about Jagdeo saying you can opt in or opt out, and that Jagdeo was being harsh there is pure nonsense. It's so uninformed that it's shameful. Because if they had only read this document, they would have seen otherwise that it's enshrined in the document. It's what we have to put to the communities. And it's not just the Tushau saying opt in. If they decide to opt in, and they all did, including Mr. Hastings, because he didn't say I want to opt out, although the APA that they support is trying to block the funds for this very same initiative, he didn't opt out, he opted in, and which is fine because that's the right of every Tushau. They now have to go back in the spirit of the free, prior, informed consent that we believe in, this cardinal rule for indigenous people that APA doesn't believe in, but this government believes in. They have to go back to their villages now and say, I have the allocation of 35 million, or 24 million, or 15 million. How are we going to spend this? So we are not telling them how to spend this money. Unlike what Stabroek News tried to say, we are micromanaging these communities. We're giving them autonomy. We're giving them the right for the first time for them to decide on their own how they want to utilize the money given to these communities. That is the ultimate trust and respect in Amerindian people. That's the ultimate, by allowing them to decide on their own. They said we micromanaging. Micromanaging is when Sidney Alicock used to go around telling people what they should do. Well, they had no funds at that time to do anything with. So this is what we have done. So when they go back to their villages now, how are we going to ensure FPIC is observed? Before they utilize the funds, each village has to send a plan to withdraw the money, because the money is now in their bank accounts. And the plan must say because it's going to be audited. The plan would say, we've held a meeting with the majority of the members of our community, and 2/3 of those members have agreed with this program, of those attending the meeting. And they have to submit the minutes of that meeting along with their village plan, so that we know now that this is not a decision made by a single individual, but the village is involved. That's the ultimate respect for the people of the community and FPIC. That doesn't get described here. Oh, we're criticizing APA too much, so we don't like FPIC. We didn't do what Hastings said, although he said nothing, absolutely nothing. We didn't do that. He's saying this to Starbuck News and giving comments outside, but not at the conference. Nothing, not a single word in the 3 hours that I was there. Open discussion, every Tushao getting up to speak, not a single word. But somehow we didn't do something that he wanted there. So that is the FPIC for you. They spoke about micromanagement in the same editorial. And then they went off on some little extraneous. How was the NTC secretariat built in Georgetown? How was it built here? Not that we built this secretariat, the PBP government put in the money to build this building in one of the primest areas in the city. If we had put it in a back area somewhere else, you would see disrespect for Amerindian people. Now we put it in the area that would have 2 hotels, the CARICOM building, all next to it, one of the primest areas in the city. It is, oh, the PPP doesn't like Amerindian people, doesn't consult enough. We get criticized for that too in this editorial. So how do you ever, and that's why we need to speak up more. That's why President Ali needed to lay out our history of involvement with Amerindian development. So next thing is, the same Tushao said, oh, although his organization says no funds, block all of it, not any cent, APA should block every development, the raising of the money, he says the 15% is not enough. So on one hand, they don't want it, but the 15% is not enough now. We had to point out it's 26%. There's this big issue of how did they come up with 15%? Well, the thing is that the government of Guyana looked at the Amerindian title lands. They have less than 15% of forested areas. But these rights are not assigned to anyone. Carbon rights are not assigned to anyone. They belong to the state of Guyana. And so when they're traded, all the funds come to the state of Guyana. We decided directly to the Amerindian communities, they will get 15% of all the proceeds. Although they have substantially less forested areas in title lands. Substantially less. But we decided they will still benefit from the 85% that is remaining, but the 85% will go to serve all of our people. Those who live in Georgetown, who live in Region 1, Region 2, Region 5, Region 6, Region 10, because we are working on adaptation projects for our whole country. Now, they want to know, so apart from the 15%, 85, they will benefit still from the 85%, some of the same indigenous communities. Oh, it's too little. In 2 years, these communities will get $9.5 billion from this fund. That was not there. In the first year, 800 odd projects. This year alone, they'll get another 800 of projects or so. That's 1,600 projects conceptualized by these communities, implemented by these communities for the benefit of these communities from funds provided through the LCDS that would not have been there had APNU been in power, because they launched a green state strategy that did not have any earning potential. And so when Norton said, oh, there's been a call for 50% of the resources now, he probably would have given 50%. 50% of zero is zero, because under the Green State strategy, in five years, they earned not a cent. We did that after the first LCDS. We earned 250 million. It came down to 220 million because of this slowth of implementation. We left the money with them. They tried to block it. We left it with them. They did nothing in the 5 years. We came back in. In the first 2 years, we worked hard. We launched this document. We got our forest certified. We traded 30% of our forest carbon, and we earned this money. This is not coming from taxpayers. This is money that we've earned because of our own initiative. We don't get credit for that, the PVP. Under APNU, they wouldn't have gotten a cent. So there would have been, Amerindians would have gotten 50% of zero. And we wouldn't have been able to build all these development, the adaptation projects. Now the 60 new cokers and the 39 pumps installed and the 40 mobile pumps and the Hope Light canals along the coast, all of that would benefit all of our people. Because some people think it's only Amerindians who will benefit from this. It's not true. All along the coast we will benefit from this too, the funds here. So I see this Norton saying 50%. You couldn't give our children $10,000. You fired the CSOs. And you now are talking about 50% you're going to give to Amerindian people? So you don't hear Sabuknus talk about this. Now, why wouldn't anyone be interested in what I just said? A newspaper should jump at this to say the Amerindians are leaving the city after engaging with this government, that on 2 initiatives on their that they're going to have 800 projects that they will do in their communities over the course of the next year. That's a great story to tell. But they're not interested in telling that story. The APA voice overrides all of the efforts of these communities and these leaders who have worked hard, because they have worked hard to implement those projects. Even the Kite Show News had about how I said the 1 million on ground development. And I was pointing out that at the coast we'll spend $10–15 million on fixing a ground. And people don't want to even cut the grass. We give the Amerindian communities $1 million each. And through self-help, you would see how far they've done in sports development, buying lights, etc. And they're going to get more money this year to continue that effort to develop sport. Those 2 initiatives. Why wouldn't the newspaper want to carry that? Nothing, not a single, I look at this paper today, nothing about the positive, nothing about the development initiatives, the discussion on agriculture, the nurseries we're creating in the hinterland for agriculture, the planting material we're giving, the chemicals, the machine and equipment, the tractor and trailer for each of these villages. Nothing of that. Some Hastings felt offended. And he didn't say a word there. In fact, they were talking about how positive these funds are for their community. So that is precisely why we have to be speaking a lot about this. And for those who are offended, well, too bad. Too bad about it. If we don't speak about these things, they will keep informing. I see APA put out a statement, and they said, oh, the PPP didn't say about the positive things that happened pre-1992. This tells you about, this is a PNC AFC outfit. You tell us what happened pre-1992, because I have a different memory. Let the APA tell us about a couple of scholarships that they themselves got. Only they're aligned, politically aligned. The friends and family got here. Not indigenous people, not Amerindian people. So even in their last statement, they really expose the political nature of this group. I see, so we are all for constructive dialogue. I said it in my speech too. We're prepared to work with any NGO, provided they're not political NGOs, because some of them disguise themselves as NGOs, but they're aligned to a political party, as the APA is. And so the Tu Shao from GACO, he said he wants constructive dialogue. If what we've had for 4 days so far has been constructive dialogue. I wouldn't pay too much attention. I see Vincent Henry now, he's offended. He didn't get to go in at a conference or something like that. It's shameful that not a word, he has dominated all the papers, not a word was spoken about that this guy, in the APNU period, the biggest allocation of funds in Region 9 went to him through the SLED program. Look at the audit report under the SLED program. He was responsible for $165 million to distribute to Amerindian communities. They talk about cash grant to Amerindian communities. If you give $100,000 each, that's 1,650 people who would have gotten that grant. Ask him how that money was distributed, how much cows they were selling and all kinds of stuff. He got that as the MP through the SLED program. Not a word about that in the Stabroek News article or Kaichor News about their sordid history of disrespect with the Amerindian communities. Now they're concerned, they're worried about all these projects being done, and Amerindian people may support the PPP. If they support the PPP, it's because we've focused on their development, and we treat people with respect, and we have had achievements in these areas. But they're very, very concerned this week. And you notice it's the usual suspects. It's the usual suspects. So we had a really great week with the 2 shows. A lot of positive things came out. It's unmatched in any country that I know of, and you're free as the media to be creative and show me another country that does exactly what we're doing, where the entire cabinet engages with indigenous leaders on development issues, not on politics, on water. On the Minister of Housing and Water was explaining the $2.7 billion there that we're spending on hinterland water and how we're going to change these communities. The Minister of Agriculture was there. The Minister of Health spoke with the people. Engaged the 2 shows about development and almost all of the other ministers. That's the first issue I wanted to deal with. The second issue has to do with the multi-year agreement signed by the GTU and the Ministry of Education. Now, last week I pointed out that Coretta MacDonald who is squatting on the position of the General Secretary of that union, illegally, shamelessly squatting on the position because her own union rules prohibit her from being General Secretary of the union and a member of parliament at the same time. The rules say she has to resign as General Secretary if she wants to go become a member of parliament, which is a political position. She has ignored the rule and she has continued to do this. She has a supernumerary dedication, so that gives her full pay as a head teacher without doing a day's work in the school. So she was as a supernumerary appointment by the government, I think even more the PPP government, and in the past, and so she gets a full salary there. And she lied about it. When was at one of the protests, someone asked her about it, and she lied there that she wasn't getting it, and we had to expose it. She gets a full salary there. She gets paid as member of parliament too. She, at the beginning, told the people, the teachers who were striking, that if the government were to not pay them for the days that they struck, they have funds to compensate them. She lied to them there too. She then made the strike about race when it was never about race. She made it in the early days of the protest. I said last week that she will continue to get instructions from Congress Place and try to sabotage the agreement and us moving forward. Because her concern is not the teachers of the country. And you can see that, the vile kind of rhetoric that she comes up with all the time, almost unhinged. If you look at it over the last couple of days, that she will try to undermine the General Council. So, and the agreement. APNU confirmed this, that it was political direction. They issued a statement that the agreement is a bad one. Now, this is APNU, and that the 10% is insulting to teachers. So, APNU confirmed that they didn't want the strike or an agreement forward. They wanted the industrial unrest and the bad blood to continue because they felt it would serve them politically. They don't care about teachers. They don't care about teachers. So they just confirm what I said last week. So they then issued another statement saying 10% proposed salary increase to teachers is insulting PNCR. This is Norton's outfit. But let's talk a bit about that first. So in 2015, from the information I gathered, there was no salary increase. I think they gave a $25,000 to everyone bonus. Having come into office and said they will significantly raise wages and salaries, they will, for public servants, they will double old age pension in 100 days. They made all these promises in their manifesto. In 2015, they lied. 2015, no salary increase. That's what I was told. They just checked it for me. I check it back. I confirmed from the other years, but 2015. But guess what they did for themselves? In the first month, they took a 50% increase for ministers. We know about that now. 50% for themselves. in the first year, first months of being in office. So I checked for the years thereafter. I just got my staff coming here when I saw this 10%. And guess what? APNU never went beyond 10%. In 2016, the salary increase ranged from 1% to 10%. 10% was maximum for people who were earning under $99,000 a month. But some people got 1% on a sliding scale. So if you're earning like maybe 200 and something thousand, you then got a 6% or something like that, sliding scale. In 2017, they lowered the scale, and also it was 0.5 to 8%. In 2018, it was 0.5 to 7%. In 2019, it was 8.5 to 9%. So those were the years, the 5 years. 2015, one-off. 2016, maximum 10%. So in no year did they go beyond 10%. And they said 10% is insulting. So let's look at what the total wage bill was in 2015. And if they gave a 10%, say across the board 10% for teachers in 2050, which was the highest, not all teachers got that. The wage bill was $14.9 billion for teachers in 2015. Say 20%, $15 billion. 10% would have been $1.5 billion. That is how much money they had to pay out. A 10% would cost them. Now the wage bill for teachers, because we've increased more teachers too, we put in more teachers as well as higher salaries, is $40 billion per year. So what would a 10% of $40 billion be? It's $4 billion. Their 10% in 2016 on a 2015 wage bill cost $1.5 billion. And our 20% now, our 10% on a $40 billion wage bill will cost $4 billion. $2.5 billion more per year than them. That, and if they found our 10% insulting, how much more insulting was their 10%, which was the maximum wage increase throughout all the years they were in office? How much more insulting was it? This is the fact. This is the fact. People don't remember that. You would believe that APNU did a really great job at giving all these increases, etc. They're back at it again, promising everything under the sun. But it was super insulting, shameless to criticize a 10% now, when it costs $4 billion, would go $4 billion more per year will go in the hands of the teachers. And your maximum wage increase that not everyone got, only those who are over 99,000 or under 99,000 a year in 1 year got a 10%. That is it. I've already spoken to you about the $90 billion increase in the wages bill since we took office for public service people. This is the semi-autonomous agencies, public corporations, central government, that includes the statutory bodies. If you look at the entire public sector, the wage bill has grown by $90 billion in the period we have been in office. So APNU weighed in. They're counting on teachers not remembering their track record or Guyanese not remembering it. They said it's insulting. But they don't want the matter to be settled. So they confirm that Coretta McDonald is the conduit to sabotage the agreement. So last week I pointed out that the Starbuck News had this thing about Coretta McDonald falsely saying that the general counsel, normally the general counsel of a union that took a decision that Starbuck News didn't report on last week, reported on Coretta McDonald, her views alone, that the general, that, and she claimed, oh, the membership is, the highest body, and that's not true, because the members don't get, unless you have a special conference of the membership, don't get to exercise that collective decision making. It's not Vanessa Kissoon or two others who are the membership. The membership is those people who are members of the union, and they claim they have 8,000 people. So this week I was hoping that there would be a more balanced reporting again. So the Starbuck News reported, and some Khadija Ba made a report, and she said this: attempts to contact Light has been futile as he repeatedly declined calls from this newspaper. So guess what happened? Only Coretta McDonald version again. The PNC version of the story is the Starbuck News story. But I was wondering how the Moraro Waves got the same Mr. Light. So their story, the Moraro Waves story, is Coretta McDonald, what she had to say, and then they spoke to the president of the union, who signed the agreement, and they carried his side of the story, this Starbuck News story. They couldn't find the man, so all they did was correct a PNC position. So this is what his comments were. Reacting moment later, after this is Coretta and Vanessa Kissoon said that he's in bed with the government. Dr. Light told the Moraro Waves online news, absolute rubbish, absolute rubbish. How would you be in concert with the government? Take them to court, fight them tooth and nail all these months and be in concert with government. That's absolute nonsense. Ms. McDonald accused Dr. Light of deceiving members of the GTU's General Council into believing this, right? This is what the GTU president said, that the public was being misled and not told of a decision by the union's General Council could only be overturned by a special conference of the membership. So like pointed out, I have a General Council agreement, and you can only overturn this by a special conference of membership. The point we were making too. I did not sign an agreement without ensuring that the Constitution was respected. The same Coretta McDonald who doesn't respect the Constitution by squatting on their General Secretary's position. The newspapers don't speak about that. The fact that the members of the General Council accepted the offer we got on the document, that was enough for me to say, yes, let's sign, he said. He said as far as he was aware, no teacher wrote asking for a special conference. How come the Moraro Waves could have carried the other view, exposing the Coretta McDonald on her PNC plot to sabotage this agreement? Starbuck News couldn't find him. So what they had was all one-sided. This is very unfortunate because it doesn't convey to a total picture. This is not balanced reporting. It's not balanced reporting. And the facts are there for you to see yourself. That's the second thing I wanted to deal with today. The third one has to do with a bit more political is I was a bit. In fact, I don't know how to describe it. I saw the AFC meeting in Linden, and they had an extremely poor turnout. They went to the car park there, hoping to catch the unsuspecting people, but even those seemed not too interested in what they had to say, the 50, 60 people. And then Norton saying, I didn't tell the people not to go to their meeting. So Norton basically saying, I think he wanted to reinforce that it was a terrible meeting and nobody was paying any attention to the AFC there. But he said, oh, we are great partners, but it was a terrible thing, nobody. And this is what he had to say. The AFC did not advise us that they were holding the meeting in Linden. In fact, like everybody else, I saw it on the day or two before on social media, he said, adding, I would assume if you're a political party and you're holding a political activity and you want our support, you should engage us. So he was saying they didn't engage him to mobilize, so that's why they had a shoddy turnout. Norton further added that he was not of the opinion that he nor his party were obligated to encourage supporters to attend the AFC meeting. So it's very interesting that this is happening because we've seen a lot of positions taken by the AFC. They're in, first of all, they claim that they, if I'm going by memory now, they claim that they would put in place an oil and gas policy at the meeting. Now, this is a party that's been in existence for maybe about 20 years now or so, 15, 20 years. This was the party that was in charge of the oil and gas sector. Nigel Hughes was the Exxon lawyer. And up to now, this is the party that signed the 2016 agreement. And they don't have an oil and gas policy as yet. But they will put one in place. So don't look forward with bated breath for originality there. Or even believability. We have, without touting all of this, we have kept our promises. We passed a new fiscal regime, where basically a new PSA that outlines a new fiscal regime for the oil and gas sector, with strengthened provisions of the PSA to address issues like decommissioning, ring fencing, greater flow of information, timely flow of information, greater transparency surrounding spending. All of that has been addressed in the new PSA and the new Petroleum Activities Act, which has replaced the 1986 Act. So we have a modern act now. So we have dealt with that. We've passed a new local content law that will see this here, $700 million of business flowing to Guyanese companies. I shouldn't say tens of thousands, maybe over 5,000 people employed in the sector, and hundreds of Guyanese companies are benefiting from this. We have strengthened, we have reconfirmed the no flaring policy. We have put in place a carbon tax for flaring, unscheduled flaring. We have strengthened the environmental permits to deal with waste management and all of those issues. So I can go through a long list. We have passed a new, or we have revised the Natural Resources Fund to bring greater transparency surrounding the use of the resources, and also removing direct charges on the NRF. I can list all of the things. We have now outlined our policy. We have gone to auction for new blocks. No more, you can't come into the government and walk away with an agreement. We are now going to do seismic studies so we can better understand what's going on in these areas. So these are all of the things we have done without touting any big policy, etc. We've made it clear we are addressing all the component parts that are important for strengthening management, monitoring of the sector. So I'm wishing them good luck in that policy. But when you need to assess leaders by how often they change their positions. So I recall Oil Now, well, I don't think he's with Oil Now anymore. What's his name? He comes, Kemal coming here and saying to me, I said, Nigel Hughes has just said we must pass a law to give Guyanese 10.5% of our resources per year, all of the oil money. That it will come up to about $35,000. Kemal said, is it 10.5 or 1.5? I said, it's 10.5. He said, when they first announced it this morning or yesterday, it was 1.5 on their page. So it moved from 1.5 to 10.5. 10.5 is only 36,000 Guyana dollars per year. So they realized that, you know, if you give 36,000 per year from the oil money, people would laugh at you basically. And that the children are getting more than that, and pensioners and everybody, 50,000 per year. So he goes there now, change again, the third time, and he said, oh, the advisory body will tell us what percentage to give. These were firm positions taken by a leader. 1.5, 10.5, now we'll get advice. So it shows you how shallow they are. They don't know what to talk about. And so for them and for Kaichur News, the same people, Kaichur News, Glenn Lal says, we should stop working. We must drink champagne and scotch on our verandas, and the government must give us oil money. We all rich. And for all of those who have been saying, oh, we are flush with oil money now, that is the APNU's excuse. We couldn't do more, so we need, because the PPP has oil money now. Never mind, oil resources are just less than 30% of the budget. So let's do some mathematics today so that people can understand how much money we really have. So you know, in the budget, we have $300 billion this year from oil money, about 1.5 billion US dollars. If you divide that by 850,000, and then divide that by 12, you'll come up to a monthly number of 29,000 Guyana dollars So if we stop building roads, we stop building schools, we stop building health centers, we stop increasing pensioners' money, we take away the children's grant, we stop doing everything else. And we give every Guyanese 100% of all the money in the budget this year. It works out to 29,000 Guyana dollars per month. The 850,000 of us will get 29,000 a month, which is 150 US dollars, about that. So that makes us rich. Now we can stop working. With 150 US dollars a month, we're rich. And remember, we're not doing anything else. We're just taking all the oil money and we are giving it out to everybody. That they don't understand magnitude. So when they see all these things happening, they think that, oh, we're flush with oil money. But let them do the mathematics. So if you imagine you get now as a Guyanese 29,000 a month, you're not getting any road. Forget the power plant, new power plant and cheaper electricity. Forget everything else. No infrastructure. Let us see defenses fall apart or anything. Everything else. Let the roads get potholed, let the roads remain narrow, we don't have nothing on the healthcare side, but we all get 29,000 Guyana dollars more per month. That will make us wealthy, and all of the money will come to us. And they will be happy. That's what they want. And Glenn Lal thinks we're rich. We must drink champagne and scotch. That's his thing. Champagne and scotch. This is how it is in this country. People don't work through numbers. So a Nigel Hughes, he just picks up, oh, let's give 1.5. When he finds that looks ridiculous, 10.5, people laugh at him. He says, oh, let's get another number. So stop everything. But he wants the pit latrine fixed now in all of the hinterland communities. And oh, we should be wealthy as a country. We start producing oil. Every problem should be fixed by now. Never mind, we just started. And it took other countries, like even Norway, the great Norway, 30 years to get where it is, to even start saving. That's the mentality that we have in this country in the opposition. It is the mentality that we have to fight every single day. $29,000. So I notice a number of things. There's a lot of scam stuff going around about people, like, you know, that Ashney Singh, the president, myself, even Elson Lowe, I saw they said he passed away. And it's a lot of scam stuff, but it's phishing. It's something generated from, I think, abroad, and with all these sensational stories. So when you go there, then they have your number, and please don't fall prey to them. They are Ponzi schemes. A lot of them hook you in. So I saw the one with Ashney Singh. Ashney Singh got rich by investing through a software into some scheme, and they're urging people to invest through that same software. So if you're stupid and you put your money there and you lose your money, they're gone with your money, don't blame the government. It's a scam that's going around. And they use prominent people to say, oh, Ashney Singh's microphone was off in an interview, and he was telling people how he was investing through this software. If you're stupid, you lose your money. You're stupid, you lose your money. Don't blame and say Ashney Singh had invested in the software. It's a scam. A lot of people calling us. I remember people getting a letter from, you know, when we had the Nigerian scam, and they get a letter, oh, put some money in this bank account and stuff. They're calling me and saying, you know, I got an offer for $500,000. I just have to give them 10,000 US dollars. I'm saying, that's since years ago, and I said to them, go ahead and lose your money. You know, so We had the same Ponzi scheme when we got into office that led to a lot of people losing their money. If people don't participate in this, I just thought I bring it to your attention because it is important there. I saw another issue where the Kaichor News and many others, just 30,000 electricity subsidy for the pensioners. And the PPP is being stingy. So this is last year's budget. In the last budget, actually, this year's budget, we said we will return the electricity subsidy that APNU took away. So we decided to give it back to the pensioners. You would recall that APNU took away the water subsidy from the pensioners too, and we returned that subsidy. So the pensioners were earning $20,500 per month under APNU. They were at $36,000 now, a 75% increase since we got into office, and we promised to double it, so next year it will go to $41,000 per pensioner. So every pensioner will get more than the $29,000 per month, or that if we take all of our oil money and divide it by the population, every pensioner per month will get more than that. They're getting more now per month than that. They're getting $36,000. So I will go to $41,000. And we have about 74,000 pensioners who are getting this. So it's a large number of people. So imagine these guys are criticizing us for the 30,000. We returned the water subsidy. We returned the electricity subsidy. We increased the pension by 75%, and we're spending another $66 to $70 million to subsidize GPL. We have had $80 billion in foregone taxes to keep transportation costs low. We've reduced water rates overall. The pensioners now are getting this year a grant to do the testing of their eyes, every pensioner, and to buy their spectacles if they need it. All of this, and we get criticized for this. They don't look at the total package, 30,000 here. But they're getting back an electricity subsidy. They got back their water subsidy. They're getting help now to do, to take care of their eyes and stuff like that. And all the investments that we are making in healthcare will help older people a lot because they would have the best facilities right in their communities. In New Amsterdam, $160 million US hospital would be built there for people in Berbice. The best care, 5 operating theaters, a number of CT scans, MRI. The pensioners would get better health care. That's what we're investing in. And we get criticized for this, 30,000. Never mind, the other guys took away their water subsidy and electricity subsidy, and we're restoring it. I have a few more things, but I think I'm going on for too long, so I'll end there. Thank you.
Jonas Williams, Kaichor News. Dr. Jagdeo, at his major press conference, the Minister of Natural Resources would have informed the Guyanese public that the current reserves are at a 11.6 billion, which is a 600 million increase. But the question I would like to know is, can you say which of the reserves, which of the discoveries, was appraised to get to this number? And secondly, earlier this year,
you had an opportunity there to deal with all.
We did ask the minister,
issues, right?
and we would have asked them before. After we would have discovered that earlier this year.
So let me just say on reserves. On the reserves, we have I told you that there is a submission that Exxon makes to us. The submission showed a minimal increase from the last quarter to this quarter of proven reserves. Minimal increase. We have gone out to contract someone to do an audit of these reserves. So we saw what Exxon submitted, and we are going to do an audit of the reserves so that we can get to the full picture. And this will be a technical audit by hiring consultants to do that. So the issue has come up, we're addressing it. All the other issues deal with at that level. The minister also told you that the field development plans, although there is proprietary, every one of them, I think he mentioned, is lodged at the Deeds and Commercial Registry. Every field development plan, I think maybe you can request it from there. I don't know if they would make it available, but I think the Deeds Registry would make them available. So the field development plans have been lodged at the registry, okay? For, I think, all of the projects so far. But on reserves, that's the end of the matter. Deal with the ministry more. I dealt with the reserves enough. Yeah.
Your government has been in office for 4 years, and currently there hasn't been a single infrastructure project that is being completed for sports. Can you explain this?
Oh, really? Do I really need to do that? To explain a single infrastructure project for sport? So, in the 4 years, we've had 2 years lost to COVID, and we've had the largest expansion of hospitals being built. You can agree with that. It's 12 new hospitals, over 600 million, and they're started. 8 has started already, and 4 will at the contracting stage now, the 4 in the hinterland. That's 1. 2, we've had the biggest expansion of education facilities in the hinterland on the coast. That has happened. We have had the largest expansion of highways ever in our history, with over 140 kilometers of 4-lane highway awarded and a substantial amount built. We have had the largest program to build bridges in the country, over 400 structures, and the major ones, a bridge across, a 4-lane bridge in Linden to cross the river, a 4-lane bridge to go between 2 and 3 that are under construction and been awarded, 45 structures from the Linden, from Lethem to Linden, which are concrete bridges, international highway standard. That has happened. We have had the biggest expansion of road building in the hinterland communities, not just the major arteries, but including in the villages themselves. If you listen to the people in Mabaruma, the Tushao who came there, she said, I've never seen so much work in my life. It's the whole settlement now, not the main area that's being paved road going in all the way to Wauna, the same thing in the Moruca sub-district in Region 9. On sports, we have upgraded 65 grounds in Berbice. Of the 125, we spent $400 million, and this year another $400 million has been awarded to expand that. If you go to New Amsterdam, you will see a major track being built there for track and field. In Linden, we just put down the track and lights with FIFA lights. We also put ICC cricket lights, but 2 major developments, massive developments on both sides of the river We're building a new stadium in Berbice that has already started. I can go on. In Anna Regina, a massive new stadium and ground is being built. I can list in Georgetown, there are 34 grounds from Agricola to Cummins Lodge, and all of them are being upgraded now. And you're asking me about sports development. Where have you been? And that's just a tip of the iceberg. I'm not the Minister of Sports. He will probably tell you hundreds of other things that's being done. I just, off the top of my head, can remember that. And you're a reporter and you ask me about these things. And you, in 2 years really, because the first 2 years was COVID years. That's what we have done. It shows a government hard at work. You ask me, ask APNU what they did in the 5 years they were there. They've been busy at renaming things. Everything gets a new name. Convention Center was a new name. They gave that a new name. Everything they were renaming. But nothing that they completed. They didn't even conceptualize it, much less implement it. And we're starting now in Maruka. We're building a new ground. We said in the sub-district where we're building a new multi-purpose sporting facility there. We're doing the same thing in Letem now. I can go on. I just told you about the two shows. In every one of the 242 villages now, we have the grounds are being upgraded in the hinterland. You're asking me what we're doing for sport?
Track in Berbice and the track in Linden. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know if it serves my memory correct, the track in Berbice and the track in Linden, they were inherited from a previous administration. They're not completed. All of the grounds that you mentioned that are being upgraded, they are not in use. And additionally, there is also something called the lottery fund that is supposed to be used for sports, and we're yet to see a project for sports allotted from this fund.
You're wasting my time totally. I just told you about billions of dollars being spent. What APNU does is identify the land and promise the people. Who you think are installing the lights? So we had a track that APNU identified, a ground that was already there. We put in the track now. We're putting in the lights and we're putting in the stadium. So what did they put in the stands? What did they put in on this track? That was what they did. And that's inherited. If we're putting in on a track, we bought the track and we're putting in the track, we're putting in the lights, and we're putting in the seating facilities. What did they do? Cut the grass? But it's this apology all the time for APNU. They did nothing. And this was in their stronghold. This was in their stronghold. And they love to talk about friends and family and stuff like that. And I see now a new thing. It's to divide our people along racial lines again. So Nigel Hughes, we know Amerindians in Guyana. That's our people. And we know that there are 9 different tribes, but we know that there's strength in the collective. We have an Amerindian Act, etc. They want to come up with a concept to divide the Amerindian people. So the last time Nigel Hughes said he wants to launch it, he was going on at the press conference about these 7 nations. He didn't realize it's 9 tribes. Till someone said to him, hold on a minute, it's 9. They had to correct him at the meeting. So it is the 7 nations, they work out a strategy, but it's 9 nations. Now they've come up with a new strategy, 9 nations. Divide again our people. It's a division strategy to divide. Nigel Hughes goes to Linden. His ancestors told him to come to Linden. His ancestors told him to go there. Now, if I go to Berbice and say that, my ancestors told me to come and talk to you, you know the criticism I will get? You people, if I go and say there, they'd say, oh, Jagdeo is racist, going there only for Indian people and stuff. They get away with all of that. We're the only party that we have ancestors of every group in our party. That's why we can't do that. Amerindians, Afro-Guyanese, Indo-Guyanese, mixed people, every other race you can think about are part of this party. We're a multiracial party. We can't get into racial politics, and they have a lot of enablers. We cannot do that. That's why we work everywhere, because we're trying to bring people together. That's what they look at all the time. Lies, oh, they had a great history of tackling sporting facilities, zero. They had a great history of giving out land. You know, when it's only friends and family, we know that that is true. Never they didn't give out land. Oh, we had a great history of giving out scholarships, and it was the ministers who were getting the scholarships. Now you have 50,000 people studying. And we had a great history of generating jobs through pepper sauce and the sale of breadfruit or something like that. That's what Granger said. You look at his interview, but they complain now, oh, Jagdeo may not be accurate. It's not 50 or 60,000. It may be 49.45 jobs, you know, 49,450. It's not 50. That's what they nitpick. It is a bunch of lies. And it's all determined to do that. And it feeds right into the narrative. And the media, some elements in the media are becoming the enablers. Enablers for the lies, and to perpetrate that, to revise the history, and also enablers to spread racism. Racism. Pure racism. Every time they go there, they have these dog whistles when they speak. Oh, my ancestors sent me here. So, Nigel Hughes, you think he cared anything when they were in office about his brothers from the ancestry? Nothing. Cathy Hughes was busy giving herself contract in our ministry. I didn't see her trying to get a youngster from Sophia a contract, which they're getting now under the PPP. She was busy helping herself. That's the friends and family thing. I didn't see that. The PPP is out there now. We just awarded $1.3 billion of contracts in Sophia in all the fields except B field, which we're going into now. And you have 75 persons or so contractors there, and the majority are Afro-Guyanese, young people getting a work. Contractors. The same Cummings. How come they didn't help Cummings? Cummings got a $10 million US contract to supply generators for the transmission project for the gas to energy project. Ask him how much he was getting on the Apnu. Courtney Bend practically collapsed. They took away the land that the PVP gave them. His son couldn't get much work. You talk to them. You talk to the supermarket, Nigel's supermarket under the PP was rearing. It died went bankrupt under the Apnu. How come the others, they were not concerned then? It is a bunch of lies, and they've gone back with the race politics as we get closer to elections. And they have a lot of enablers every day carrying the nonsense. Yes, please.
The GTU and the Ministry of Education yesterday signed the multi-year agreement. However, a number of teachers would have reached out, and their concern is that looking at not just the 10%, but also the non-salary benefits, that it would have a greater impact, or the greatest impact, on those at the higher end of the spectrum. How do you respond to this?
I've said all that I had to say on this matter. You're enabler of the PNC position again, trying to undermine their agreement. Enabling the PNC position. Coretta MacDonald, who reached out, which teacher? Is that the General Council of the Union made a decision? You heard the President of the Union, not a single teacher. He said that in the Demo Waves story. Not a single teacher has asked for a special conference to discuss it. You think I'm going to continue? I'm not going to enable their lies anymore. They have enough of that. Yes, go on. Let's That's one.
Finally, sir, looking at the fact that that your administration would have failed to keep your key election promises to renegotiate the oil contract, can you say why they should vote for you again?
Oh, I dealt with that already. We've kept all our promises.
Dr. Jagdeo, Kurt Campbell, Newsroom. When you visited Region 9, you had provided an update on youth participation and how many young people had joined the PYO. Could we get a similar report for your visit to Maruka in Region 1?
Yeah, it's upward of 300. And so that's only for the Maruka sub-district. So next Thursday, I am going to Matakai for that sub-district, the PYO activity. And then on Friday, I'm going into Mabaruma for the youth activity there too. Tomorrow, I'm dealing with East Bank. The PYO activity would be on the East Bank. So we anticipate about 900 young people from Region 1 because about 300 per each sub-district. Maybe Matakai would have a little less, but Mabaruma would have more. And not all of them get to come to the meetings, all the members, because it's a representative group. We can't bring everyone out, from the villages. So, and that will happen right across Guyana. And in the Essequibo Coast, I told you already, just over 600 people showed up there, the youth engagement I had there.
And secondly, do you have any updates for us on the final approval of the U.S. Exim Bank loan for the gas to energy project?
No, I had a meeting with Brassington and Zulfikar, who is in the embassy in Washington. They have been engaging Exxon, Exim Bank. Minister Ashney Singh will be going to Washington soon, and so he'll be meeting with the executives there.
And finally from me, any update
But
on...
let me give you a figure, because this would be news to the people of this country. So we have, on this project, which is slated to complete next year, it's $761 million for the NGL facility and also the power plant. I've pointed out that the economics of the project, how the costs will be reduced, and everything else. So we have, from our own resources so far, because of the delay in the loan, we have from our own resources paid about $400 million US. So more than half of the project from our own resources. The aim was to borrow about $650 million from Exim Bank. And we had $100 million in the first year as the advance payment, and to borrow the rest from Exim Bank, about 660. We have from our own resources. So that's even better for us. Now the loan from Exim Bank, we can get reimbursed for it because the way it's structured. But just to tell you that the project will be done, and we are, even if it means carrying it from our own budget, and the country should even be happy with this, that we managed to carry that from our own budget and still do all the other developments we're talking about. But just to give you a bit of information on that.
Results of the census that was conducted.
Okay, I don't know where, you should talk to Ashney Singh on that, but they should have put out the report by now. A report will come out shortly. I don't know exactly. I don't deal that often with the Stats Bureau. Yes, go on.
The Guyana Times. You mentioned earlier about the transparency of the carbon credit funding to the indigenous communities. We're heading into a second cycle or a second year of payout.
What I didn't get you.
I'm talking about the transparency of the payout of the carbon credit funding to the indigenous communities. Can you say whether an audit was done from the
Yes.
first set?
Right. So the audit has to be done as part of the process. So that will be part of the entire, because we, at the end of the day, we have to account for all of these funds, and with a separate audit that will go to the parliament. We decided that these funds will come through the budget but be placed in a special account. So the money, even now, the money that we have for adaptation will go into the special account and then would be subjected to separate audit. We have not spent all of the first year's allocation as yet. So I guess the audit will take place as the spending is completed. Most of these villages just about to complete their project, or they're just completed. So at the end of the day, that will be done. But it's part of the process. If you look at the documents outlined, you will see all the measures that are in place to safeguard first of all, to involve people at the village level, ensure that the projects are properly managed, and then that we get the desired outcome, and the accountability for the funds is also ensured that through an audit. So all of that is part of the process.
Can you also provide an update on government's discussions regarding the CARSIA credits with airlines? Have you had any?
Okay, but that's just ongoing. We're looking. Remember what happened at the last COP? Because there was no agreement to move Article 6 along, which catered for the development of markets. And that, I think, was a setback for carbon pricing, and particularly forest carbon. So it's good that we managed to get our bilateral deal. We're having a hard time getting people to match those prices now, because in the voluntary markets globally, what we sold for $15, $20, and $25, it's sometimes between $1 to $2. That is what's happening in the voluntary markets.
There's nothing concrete that could come out.
No.
on the
But we're not. You see, the good thing about it, we're not in any hurry to dispose of the 70% of credits that we have, because we are waiting to get the right price. We're not in any desperate situation where we have to accept anything that's on the market. We will only go into premium markets. But you also have a global market that influences the price paid on the premium market. So we are not desperate to dispose of it. We're not APNU. They would probably sell out the whole thing for $1 if they could have conceived of it and monetize it, which they couldn't.
Finally, for me, is government considering adjusting taxes or duties on the importation of newer vehicles to allow persons?
At budget time, you'll know that. That's a budget time question. A budget time question about taxes and reduction of taxes. Save that for the budget, next budget. Pre-budget or post-budget thing. I can't, even if we were, I wouldn't tell you here. That announcement should come from the president or the Minister of Finance. I wouldn't tell you now. Yes, please.
Luan Williams, DPI. Sir, can you provide an update on the investor for the Berbice oil refinery?
But the Minister of Natural Resources dealt with that issue already. What he said is that we have several expressions of interest through a bid process. There are others who've expressed interest. Some have claimed that at a 25,000 barrel per day refinery might not be feasible, so we are examining that issue. And then we're examining alternatives to a refinery, which could be a fuel farm, which increases the amount of storage, strategic reserves, that could bring greater energy security to our country and drive prices down. So, and wouldn't bring the emissions that inevitably come with refineries. So all of that is being examined. Yes, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Sure, I'm back with Kiteshare News. Last week, the Minister of the Oil Minister, let's say Oil Minister Vikram Bharat said that Guyana has one of the best managed oil sectors in the world. Do you agree with him, and could you tell us your comments why?
Yes, I think when I look at the comments coming out from other places, like presentations made in especially the newly emerging producers, they use Guyana often as an example of the changes that have taken place in a relatively short period of time. So they look at, for example, the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And right from the beginning of oil production, we've established a Sovereign Wealth Fund and we've started saving. That has not always been the practice of many oil producers, including Norway. It took Norway over 25 years of oil production to start saving. And that is a big country that has a higher per capita GDP at that time than we have. So that's the first thing. When you look at the provisions of the fund, that there is no direct charge on the Natural Resource Fund. Some countries have a direct charge on the Natural Resources Fund. We removed that, this government. So every cent that you spend of oil money has to go through a budgetary process. That means Parliament. You can't spend oil money outside of the approval of Parliament. Not many countries have that. A lot of countries, you can go into the fund and spend the resources without seeking the approval of Parliament. Two, we have a transparent formula for transferring money from the NRF to the budget. Three, we have the strongest disclosure agreement anywhere in the world in terms of receipt of oil money, with a 10 years penalty jail term for the Minister of Finance for failing to disclose. And that is on an ongoing basis, every 3 months. We've strengthened the provision, the management of the fund by putting in a board instead of the Minister of Finance having oversight, sole oversight. We've strengthened the auditing provisions and the debate in Parliament. So good practice, some of the best practices in the world in our Sovereign Wealth Fund, apart from the saving. That is an example that many of the countries are using now, how Guyana did that. The second area is the local content policy. Trinidad and Tobago had a local content policy, but not a law. It took them to get to that policy nearly 100 years after they're producing oil and gas. We started it as soon as we got back into office, forcing now oil and gas companies not to hire Guyanese and to procure from Guyanese. You know what was happening before. They're bringing food through French companies, bringing in water from different parts of the world, all of that. Renting from only connected people who come in from abroad and build facilities, all of that is out. Security services, etc. So a carve out for our people. That is best practice again. We revised the PSA. We have some of the strongest provisions now, the non-fiscal provisions, but we have increased our fiscal provisions too from the agreement that was signed in 2016. We passed a new Petroleum Activities Act that is one of the most modern in the world, that gives us the tool to manage a contemporary oil and gas industry now. Not a 1986 one, updating it. And this happened in a short period, but extending its scope to transport of fuel, etc. We're now moving to pass oil spill legislation, for want of a better word. So very few countries have done this in such a short period of time. We've done all of this in a relatively short period of time, 3-4 years. And that countries that are better equipped, better resourced than us, even developed countries, haven't even gotten to as yet. So it's one of the better managed industries in the world. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have problems with the 2016 agreement, but I'm telling you about the management tools and what we have done. We're one of, in carbon tax, we're one of few countries in the world that have a non-flaring policy, but put in place a carbon tax for unscheduled flaring. These are best practices that are used around the world. So that's why, in spite of all the negatives we get here in Guyana, globally, and in many of these countries that are now trying to emerge as oil and gas producers, they're looking to the Guyana example to learn a lot about how we've done this.
If I may follow up, do you think that there's still room for improvement in managing the oil sector, and what are some of these ways you can improve?
Always room for improvement. We have to build greater capacity. Right now, we rely on a lot of external consultants for advice. Over time, we'd have to replace those with Guyanese consultants. There's always room for better management, always to improve this. But what we have now today is light years away from what we had in 2020. Practically nothing. No local content law, no the 1986 law that we're managing with to the sector, the old agreement, no new PSA, all of those things. So we never used to go to auction at that time. We didn't have any seismic to prove our reserves. We're going in this area too. Didn't have oil spill legislation. There was no carbon tax. It's a light year away from what we had. So that's why I think the minister said that.
Dr. Jagdeo, there are some concerns that were raised over the awarding of the contract to Fulcrum LNG for the gas project here. So I would just like to ask if...
Yes, but what's the nature of the concern? Because we addressed this matter, the president did, the minister did, I did here. We had an open process. We knew that the person worked with Exxon. He had left Exxon, if that's the nature of the concern. Yes, he left Exxon. We knew that when the evaluation took place. But the evaluation took place on the basis of the proposals that were made. And when we look, I can't remember all the companies that I listed that were part of that proposal. From the studies perspective, from the engineering perspective, these were some of the major companies in the world that were part of that proposal. And they had a comprehensive proposal. So the evaluation took place on the basis of the quality of the proposal, and two, with the full knowledge that he had worked with Exxon, he had left Exxon. But if anything, maybe the evaluators thought that he had the data on the gas. I don't know if they did that, and so he would have known, because Exxon does not want to go in that direction, or did not want to go in that direction of monetizing the gas in the early period. They said they needed the gas to be reinjected. We have a different view. And so, on the face of it, I thought it was the best proposal that the evaluators came up with, and that's what we're looking for. So there was nothing that I found wrong with the evaluation of the bid. And I don't see anything that has come out in any major way that's wrong, except for that, oh, he worked at one time with Exxon.
So there were concerns over the experience because he had 1 year.
Yeah, but he was there with Exxon a long time, but he has been a project developer for a long time. And the thing is that when you look at the project proposal and who the project were associated with this project development, it's some of the biggest companies in the world.
Finally, Catch News carried an article saying last week you said that Exxon was making a massive return on equity. Could you tell us what is that rate of return? The exact money they're making?
The thing is that it is the investment, and if you look at over time, this will grow significantly. So it changes over time. Like right now, if you look at it, it probably would be relatively low. Because if they had to put in, say, of the 60 billion, maybe, let's use a number, 30 billion in equity. But they're getting only, it's 12 and a half, but in fact we're getting 12 and a half. They're getting 10.5% of the total sale of oil, the total value of the oil per year. It may seem, when you compare that based on equity invested, it may seem relatively modest over this period. But when we start clearing off the cost bank, then that grows enormously. And therefore, their return on equity will increase significantly over time. So they're going to get a great return on their equity, massive return on their equity. We will over time too get a significant increase in revenue because of the clearing of the cost bank. But there's no doubt that they're going to get a good return. And a lot of it has to, or this return has to do with the fiscal provisions under the PSA, the 2016 PSA, that we have now adjusted in the new PSA. So I think it's self-explanatory. It is something that I don't even need to explain because everybody says that. Any sensible person would know why I said that. It is clear, and it's largely because of the provisions of the PSA.
Dr. Jagdeo, Cordell Jones, Live Wire News.
Yes.
Last evening, the chairman for Region 10 was on a live program with Coretta MacDonald, and he claimed that Region 10 is not a part of the government's One Guyana theme. The MP then suggested that they hand Region 10 over to Venezuela. What are your thoughts on that kind of commentary from a sitting member of parliament?
That we hand
Region 10
over to Venezuela?
Yes.
Because if that had been a comment by a PPP member of parliament, already the entire media would be making an issue of it. You recall that the same thing happened several months ago. That APNU had been perpetrating this lie that I offered Venezuela a piece of our maritime boundary. Because I once did an interview and said, I'm aware that in the ministry there was a view, to do this. Not that I offered as president. I'm aware that there was a view. The Venezuelans actually, in their case before the ICJ, well, in some of their filings before the ICJ, really showed that it was APNU that had suggested this in what happened in the period under APNU. I pointed this out, that it's not true and that it was done under APNU. Cathy Hughes went to London too, because that's where they go to spread racism and lies a lot of times. And she said that Jagdeo wanted, and this was in the height of the difficulties we had with Venezuela, you know, the threat of invasion and everything else, that Jagdeo, now as a former president of this country, had offered this to Venezuela. Now, this is not just irresponsible talk. They're a total lie. And then I said, at my press conference, she was a lowlife to make that comment. And I still hold that view. Because she's a politician and trying to undermine our national position and our sovereignty by lying on your political opponent when it would just embolden Venezuela is disgusting. It's only low lives could do that sort of thing. You know, people who don't have any conscience or are dishonorable. And I pointed out that and some other examples, including the video mega story. So they've sued me, and I'm going to court to prove that what I've said is right. I will prove it in the case that she and you know, let me don't go on too much about that. But now Coretta McDonald has said the same thing. And I would repeat it, that this is unacceptable behavior. This is the sort of thing, these people don't care anything. If Coretta McDonald had any integrity or credibility whatsoever, she should not have. I told you of several instances where she lied to the people of this country, lied to them, and she is now violating her own union's rules. But she is the conscience of the country. They're the ones, it fits into the narrative of racial politics and their enablers. It fits into that same narrative about dividing our people. They're finding it harder to carry that narrative now, though, because people are smarter to their concerns. By the way, I forgot to bring the flyer that they're distributing now. They got a flyer. It's a hopeless flyer. They went to Calcutta in Region 5. They went to Haslington, Farfair Harmony, and they're distributing a hopeless. I could prepare a better flyer for them politically that would probably be more believable than the one that they have. No creativity whatsoever. It's the same thing. Oh, we give couple buses to the school children, and PPP don't run the buses anymore. Never mind, though they took away 8 billion from the school children through the 10,000 grant, 1.6 billion over 5 years. Never mind, they took away that and got a few old buses and put Granger's name on it. Silly things like that. Oh, the PP don't care about you, we care about you. There's no hope in Guyana. Lie about jobs too. We provided jobs to the country. PPP not getting, there's high unemployment now when we can't find laborers. The mediocre flyers pushing racism all the time. I should have brought the flyer, it slipped me, because it is the lies on the ground. the dog whistled once again. So I don't find it unusual for a Coretta McDonald to do this. A Coretta McDonald. As I said before, they're becoming a little unhinged.
Finally, Nigel Hughes is representing the company that's trying to get Guyana to adhere to this arbitral award. Do you see this as a clear example of him putting his financial interest before the interest of the country, being the leader of a political party?
Well, let me don't be unfair to Nigel Hughes. He himself has said that. You don't need me to have him, to give my view on whether he will put national interest or personal interest above national interest. He said this himself. He was very, very clear about it. Dennis Chabrol from the Morar Waves asked him a question. He even said if there is a cent more, that use 1 cent. And Nigel Hughes made it clear. If the national interest conflicts with that of my client's interest will prevail. So he has said it all in that statement. In another country, as I said before, he wouldn't have had a political career anymore because people would see through him immediately. This has been his history. They would see through it immediately. They would never use. That's a fatal statement in another country. But this is the same man that can go on the platform and talk about oil and gas policy, but would not address the elephant in the room, that he's working for the company that they claim that is ripping off the people now of Guyana. He is working and he refuses to resign. And he doesn't see that as conflict of interest. And I wonder what he will say if you had, whether that would be part of their policy to address conflict of interest situations. So it's clear. He has said it himself. Doesn't care anymore. Thank you.